What happens when late-night comedy meets a woman who refuses to be the punchline? On a crisp New York night, beneath the glittering skyline, behind Stephen Colbert's desk, Meghan Markle arrived expecting admiration, yet ready for confrontation. Stephen smiled, Meghan smiled, but only one of them meant it. By the end of the night, Colbert's desk would no longer be a stage for light-hearted banter. It would become a battleground neither of them saw coming. The Late Show studio was buzzing even before the cameras rolled. The New York skyline shimmered through the massive backdrop window, traffic lights snaking into the distance like glowing veins. The blue armchairs were spotless, the wooden desk polished to a sheen, and the mugs, deep navy emblazoned with Colbert's logo, sat like props in a play waiting for their actors. Stephen Colbert adjusted his tie, glanced at his cue cards, and grinned. "It's going to be interesting," he whispered to a stagehand. The stagehand only widened his eyes and mouthed, "Good luck." When Meghan Markle stepped onto the set, the audience erupted. Her dark navy blazer and crisp white shirt gave her an air of polished authority. Hair pulled into a perfect low bun, she moved with the calculated elegance of someone who knew exactly how the camera loved her. Stephen rose to greet her. "Meghan, wonderful to have you here." She offered a small smile, sharp at the edges, like it had been measured with a ruler. "Thank you for having me, Stephen. I didn't realize the audience would be this excited." The emphasis wasn't playful. It bordered on a challenge. They sat, the cameras zoomed in, and the applause faded. "So," Stephen began, folding his hands theatrically, "you've had quite a life these past few years. California sunshine, Netflix deals, podcasts. How's the quiet life treating you?" A simple question. A softball. But Meghan tilted her head, eyebrows lifting. "Is that what you think I'm living? A quiet life?" Stephen chuckled lightly. "Well, compared to royal duties and palace protocol," Meghan cut in smoothly. "Stephen, with respect, I didn't come here to compare my life to palace stereotypes." A few audience members shifted uncomfortably. Stephen nodded, still smiling, but now with a flicker of caution. "All right, no stereotypes," he said. "Let's start fresh. What's something you've learned about yourself since stepping back from royal life?" Meghan inhaled as though the question bored her. "I've learned that people are far more interested in projecting stories onto me than hearing the truth. And every time I sit down with someone, it becomes yet another interrogation about the past." Stephen blinked. "That wasn't an interrogation. That was, it's fine." Meghan waved a hand. "I'm used to it." For the first time, Stephen's practiced smile faltered. Just a millimeter, but enough that the audience saw it. Cameras captured it. Producers straightened in their seats. "All right," Stephen said, recalibrating. "Fair enough. Let's talk about your work then. You've been very vocal about wanting to inspire women around the world. That's admirable." Meghan's lips twitched into something that almost resembled sincerity. "Thank you," she said. Then her smile sharpened. "Though, to be honest, I'm not sure the late-night audience is the demographic most committed to women's empowerment." The studio chuckled nervously. Stephen laughed louder than necessary. Because what else do you do when your guest is already poking holes in the room you're sitting in? "Well," he said, leaning on his desk, "we've had some pretty empowered people here. You're in good company." Meghan didn't soften. "I suppose we'll see about that." Stephen swallowed. The tension had settled like an invisible fog between them, but he pushed on. "All right," he said, flipping his card. "I want to ask you something lighter, something fun. You've talked a lot about California living, yoga, hiking, mindfulness. What's a typical morning for you like?" Meghan stared at him, a long, unblinking stare. "Stephen," she said quietly, "women in my position don't have typical mornings, and I'm not here to be reduced to a lifestyle segment." Stephen opened his mouth, then closed it again. This wasn't banter. This wasn't comedic rhythm. This was quicksand. "Well," he tried again, "I certainly didn't mean to reduce anything. Our viewers love—" "Your viewers," Meghan interrupted, "love a narrative. I'm simply not interested in performing one." The audience murmured. Producers exchanged frantic glances. The energy in the room shifted, small, subtle, but undeniable. Stephen leaned back in his chair, hands clasped. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's find a narrative you are interested in." Meghan smoothed her blazer, eyes glinting. "We'll see if you can." And just like that, the temperature in the studio dropped several degrees. Stephen smiled, but this time, it didn't reach his eyes. Meghan smiled too, but hers never intended to. The real interview hadn't started yet, but the battle absolutely had. The band played a light riff under the tension, as if the music hadn't yet realized the mood in the room had shifted. The audience clapped on cue, but there was an uneasy edge to it now, like laughter that arrived a second too late. Stephen shuffled his blue cue cards theatrically. "All right," he said, flashing his trademark grin. "Clearly, you're not here for smoothie bowl questions. Point taken." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Meghan gave a tight smile. "I'm glad we're on the same page," she replied. "I've just done enough of the what's your favorite yoga pose interviews, you know?" "Hey," Stephen said, raising a hand. "For the record, I wasn't going to ask about yoga. I was going to ask about Pilates." The audience laughed. Meghan didn't. "I'm sure you were," she said flatly. Stephen's grin thinned, but he pushed on, slipping into the tone he used when a guest needed gentle steering. "Let's talk about something a little more substantial then," he said. "When you and Harry decided to step back from royal duties, it was a shock to a lot of people. Looking back now, if you had to do it again, would you change anything about the way you handled it?" Meghan inhaled slowly, considering, but not in a reflective way, in a tactical way. "I would change the way people reacted," she said, "not the way we acted." It was the kind of answer that would sound strong in a prepared statement. Here, under the studio lights, it sounded like a door slammed shut. Stephen nodded lightly. "But of course, you can't change people. You can only change PR statements." The audience chuckled. Meghan's gaze flicked to him sharply. "Is that a joke?" she asked. "It's a late-night show," Stephen replied. "I'm required by law to attempt jokes." Some laughter, not enough. Meghan tilted her head. "It's interesting how often my pain has become a punchline." The air snapped tighter. Even the band went quiet. Stephen's expression sobered. "I'm not making fun of pain," he said, "but you have done high-profile interviews, podcasts, documentaries, a lot of public storytelling. That comes with commentary." "You mean criticism," Meghan corrected. "Let's not soften it. Criticism, commentary," Stephen said. "Tomato, tomato. People who aren't targeted by it don't get to rename it," she replied. There it was again, a precision strike, delivered with a calm voice and steel eyes. Stephen took a breath, regrouping. "Okay," he said. "Let's turn this from commentary about you into commentary from you. You've talked a lot about having your truth. Do you feel like people are any closer to understanding that truth now?" Meghan gave a small, almost pitying smile. "Stephen," she said, "most people don't want truth. They want confirmation. They hold on to whatever version of me makes them feel morally superior." "And what version is that?" he asked. "The one where I should have stayed quiet, stayed grateful, stayed smaller," she said. "They don't like a woman who walks away from a gilded cage and then has the audacity to speak about it." The audience applauded, some enthusiastically, some uncertainly. Stephen nodded. "I think a lot of people respect that," he said. "But some might say," he paused, choosing his words with surgeon-level care, "that you haven't exactly stepped out of the spotlight. You've just built a different one." Meghan's smile vanished. "Is that what this is about?" she asked. "You think I'm addicted to attention?" "I'm asking whether you feel caught between craving privacy and needing a platform," Stephen clarified. "It's a question, not a verdict." "It sounds like a verdict," she said. "An incredibly lazy one." A quiet oof escaped someone in the back row. Stephen exhaled, his patience starting to strain at the edges. "Words hurt, Meghan," he said dramatically, putting a hand over his chest. "I'm a fragile talk show host." "That's one thing we definitely don't have in common," she replied. "I'm not fragile." "Well, you seem very sensitive to framing," he countered gently. "Because framing is how you strip people of nuance," she shot back, "and I know how that game is played." For the first time, Stephen's eyes hardened behind his glasses. "I'm not playing a game," he said evenly. "I'm trying to have a conversation. And I'm trying not to let this become yet another performance of, let's dissect Meghan until she apologizes for existing," she said. The audience murmured. This time, there was very little laughter. Stephen leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands. "Okay," he said, his voice lower. "Let me try something else. No jokes, no glibness, just a human question." He looked at her directly. "Are you happy?" The question hung there, simple but heavy. Meghan blinked, momentarily thrown off. Something flickered in her eyes, vulnerability maybe, but she crushed it quickly. "That's such an American television question," she said. "Package trauma, tie it with a bow, call it happiness." "It's a human question," Stephen repeated. "You've been through a lot. I'm asking if you're okay on the other side of it." "How touching," Meghan said, her tone ice smooth. "But if I say I'm happy, people will accuse me of being ungrateful. If I say I'm not, they'll accuse me of being dramatic. There's no answer that won't be weaponized." "So you refuse to answer?" Stephen asked. "I refuse to play into a binary for the sake of ratings," she replied. The audience shifted again. Some were clearly on her side. Others weren't sure what they were watching anymore. Stephen's laugh was tight this time. "For the record," he said, "my ratings are doing just fine without your binary." A few people laughed, a few gasped. Meghan's eyes narrowed. "Was that another joke?" "Depends," he said. "Did it land?" She didn't laugh. He tossed his cue cards down on the desk, just a little harder than before. "All right," he said. "Let's talk about the monarchy, because if I don't, Twitter will, and then we'll move on." Meghan sighed. "Of course." "Do you ever worry," Stephen asked, "that in telling your side, you've also made it harder for others in that institution, especially the ones who can't speak?" "The way you have?" Meghan stared at him, disbelief flashing across her face. "You mean, do I feel guilty for telling the truth?" she asked. "No, I don't." "I didn't say guilty," he corrected. "I said worried." "It's the same implication," she replied, "that I should have been quieter, softer, more strategic about my own survival." Stephen shook his head. "No, the implication is that actions have ripple effects, and you've created a very big wave." "And maybe the wave needed to happen," she said. "Maybe a system built on silence needed to be shaken." He nodded slowly. "That's a powerful answer, but you don't believe it," she said. He frowned. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to," she replied. "You're very good at asking sharp questions and hiding behind humor. I see it." The audience reacted again, this time with a mix of thrill and discomfort, the feeling you get when a car takes a turn just a little too fast. Stephen's voice cooled. "I make jokes for a living," he said. "I'm not hiding behind them. They're right out in the open. And yet, any time I push back, it suddenly becomes, 'Oh, Meghan can't take a joke,'" she said, "as if my job is to make your punchlines more comfortable." Stephen took off his glasses, cleaning them slowly, buying time. "You know," he said, "I've sat across from presidents, prime ministers, people in the middle of major scandals. Somehow, we've managed to joke and be serious at the same time, without the room catching fire. Maybe none of them were as exhausted as I am," she replied. A long pause. The skyline behind them glittered on the big screen. Inside the studio, it felt as if the night had closed in. Stephen slid his glasses back on. "Meghan," he said, his voice measured, "if you feel this exhausted, why keep doing interviews? Why be here tonight?" The question silenced even the shuffling of the crew. Meghan's expression shuddered. "Because if I don't speak," she said, "people invent a narrative, and if I do speak, people resent me for it. So I might as well at least tell my side on my own terms." "And are these your terms right now?" he asked. Her eyes flashed, a spark of real anger underneath the composure. "They were supposed to be," she said. "I agreed to a conversation, not a subtle cross-examination dressed up with applause and commercial breaks." The band, waiting for a cue that didn't come, sat perfectly still. Stephen tapped his fingers lightly on the desk, the only sound in the room. "Well," he said slowly, "if you think this is a cross-examination, you might not like what the internet does tomorrow morning." The audience reacted. Nervous laughter, a few ohs, a pocket of applause that died quickly. Meghan leaned back, folding her arms. "That's exactly the problem," she said. "Everyone keeps warning me about the internet. No one ever asks why the internet is more important than decency." Stephen stared at her. Really stared this time, long enough that even the camera operator hesitated. "This is still a comedy show," he said finally, voice low. I try to keep things light, even when we talk about heavy issues. And I'm telling you, she replied, some issues don't want to be light. Their smiles were gone now. What remained between them was not banter. It was a line. And they had both just stepped over it. The commercial break should have helped. Normally it did. Gave everyone a breath, gave the tension time to melt into the carpet. But tonight, the energy didn't reset. It only condensed, like steam trapped in a sealed room. When the cameras came back on, Stephen smiled the way professionals do when they're trying to hide a bruise forming beneath the surface. Meghan, on the other hand, didn't even try. She settled into her seat with cool, unbothered composure, blazer perfectly pressed, hair pinned tight, jaw tighter. Welcome back, Stephen said. We're here with Meghan Markle, having what I think we can all agree is a very honest conversation. That earned a few uneasy chuckles from the audience. Meghan didn't blink. I don't believe in dishonest ones, she said. We've had enough of that. Stephen nodded as if absorbing a jab he'd expected, but hoped wouldn't land. Let's talk, he said, shifting in his chair, about your public advocacy, women's rights, mental health, racial equality. You've been very outspoken. Some would say passionately so. Others would say divisively so. Meghan's brow arched sharply. Divisive is a word people use when they're uncomfortable with a woman who refuses to be polite about injustice, she replied. It's a way of blaming me for their discomfort. Stephen raised a hand. But isn't it fair to say that sometimes your messaging... Stephen, she interrupted, her tone surgical. People don't get to tone police a woman who spent years having her voice minimized. If I speak firmly, it's because I refuse to be muted again. This time, the audience applauded, loudly. But it wasn't unanimous, and that mattered. The applause didn't energize the room. It fractured it. Stephen leaned forward, threading his fingers together. All right, he said. Let's look at specifics then. You've talked a lot about being silenced, but some critics argue you've had more platforms, bigger platforms, than most people ever will. Oprah, Netflix, podcasts, a memoir, a docuseries. Does saying you were silenced feel contradictory with how much you've spoken publicly since leaving the royal family? There it was. A major question, delivered neutrally, but it hit like a hammer. Meghan's eyes hardened. She said quietly. We're doing that. Doing what? Stephen asked, shoulders tensing. Pretending that visibility equals power, she replied. Pretending that a woman who speaks after years of surviving something should somehow apologize because the world finally listens. I didn't say apologize, Stephen clarified. You implied it, she said. You implied that my voice is excessive, that my truth is inconvenient, that I owe the world silence because I spoke once. Stephen exhaled, steadying himself. I implied, he said carefully, that sometimes your words have created backlash, and I'm asking whether you feel any responsibility for how you've shaped public perception. Meghan leaned back, crossing her legs with elegant precision. I'm not here to soothe public perception, she said. I'm here to exist, and if that bothers people, Stephen, that says everything about them and nothing about me. The audience murmured, a mixture of admiration and discomfort. Stephen tried again. Let me put it a different way, he said. Is there anything you feel you've learned, or unlearned, from the way your interviews have shaped your public narrative? Meghan clasped her hands on her knee. I've learned, she said, that no matter what I say, there will always be people waiting to twist it, flatten it, weaponize it. That sounds exhausting, he said. It is, she replied. And yet, here we are. You're asking me to justify my storytelling while avoiding accountability for yours. Stephen blinked. My storytelling? Yes, she said. This interview, this structure, these questions, they all tell a version of me, a version you want viewers to react to. Stephen's smile flickered. You think I'm manipulating your narrative? Meghan shrugged slightly. You're shaping it. That's what hosts do. Stephen gave a small, humorless laugh. Well, in my defense, shaping narratives is literally my job, he said. I'm a talk show host, not a stenographer. And I'm a human being, not a character you get to edit for comedic effect, she replied. That one landed, hard. Stephen's jaw tightened. Meghan, he said, slipping the cards aside, I'm not trying to paint you as anything other than who you are. No, she countered softly. You're trying to paint me as who you think I should be. Palatable, warm, gracious, easily quotable. That's not fair, he snapped before catching himself. It was barely noticeable, but it was the first real crack in his composure. Meghan watched him carefully. You invited me here to talk, she said, but you don't want to hear me. You want to filter me. Stephen leaned forward, voice low. That's a pretty bold accusation. It's not an accusation, she said. It's an observation. A few audience members gasped. Someone whispered, Oh my God. Stephen took off, his glasses again, cleaning them slowly. A ritual, a stall, a way to keep the fuse from burning too fast. What do you want from this interview, Meghan? He asked finally. Truly, because right now, it feels like nothing I ask will be acceptable. Meghan tilted her head, the slightest smile forming, not warmth, something closer to exasperated insight. What I want, she said, is a conversation that doesn't begin from the assumption that I'm a problem to be solved. I haven't said that, Stephen replied. You haven't had to, she said. Silence, thick, pressurized, heavy enough that even the band members froze behind their instruments. Stephen folded his arms slowly, leveling his gaze. I've been doing this show a long time, he said carefully. And I've had difficult conversations before, heated ones. But I don't think I've ever had a guest accuse me of bad faith simply for asking questions. Meghan didn't waver. Maybe that's because most guests aren't used to their lives being dissected like mine, she replied. Maybe they come here playing along with the performance. I don't. Stephen gave a tight smile. Oh, we can all tell. She didn't laugh. He continued. Meghan, this is late-night television. We mix humor with seriousness. It's part of the format. Your format doesn't excuse disrespect, she said. Disrespect? He echoed, eyebrows shooting up. Yes, she said calmly. You keep pushing the same angles, implying the same narratives, packaging your concerns as curiosity. That's disrespectful. Stephen sat back. Or, he said, it's just an interview. And that is the problem, she replied. You think this is harmless. Stephen took a slow breath. I think, he said, that you're making this far more adversarial than it needs to be. Meghan's voice dropped to a quiet, icy register. And I think you're underestimating how harmful it feels when someone pretends to listen while really trying to corner me. That landed like a punch. The audience reacted out loud this time, an audible wave of shock. Stephen's tone hardened. I'm not cornering you. You're trying to, she accused, but I'm not cornerable. A sharper silence fell. Something had shifted, permanently. Stephen looked directly at her. We're halfway through this interview, he said, and I'm genuinely asking, do you want to continue? Meghan crossed her arms. I'm here, she said. Are you? That did it. You could feel it. Something inside Stephen's demeanor clicked, tightened, braced. The studio audience sensed it too. The room was no longer watching a tense interview. It was watching a fuse burn steadily toward the detonator. Something in the air snapped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. So quiet that only the audience members in the front row physically leaned forward, the way you do when you sense a storm before it breaks. Stephen folded his hands together on the desk, posture straightening, voice lowering. Meghan, he said calmly, I'm going to ask something directly, without any setup, without humor, just one human being talking to another. Meghan lifted her chin, poised, fearless, or determined not to blink first. Go ahead. Stephen exhaled slowly, almost sadly. Why does every question feel like an attack to you? The audience sucked in a breath. Meghan froze, not visibly at first, but in her eyes, a flash of something raw. Then she blinked and the wall slammed back into place. That is an incredibly manipulative question, she said coldly. Stephen didn't flinch. It's not meant to be, it's meant to understand what's happening right now. What's happening, Meghan replied sharply, is that you're trying to paint me as unreasonable. I'm trying to understand you, he said. And failing, she shot back. Stephen leaned in. Then help me succeed. She stared at him as if deciding whether he deserved an answer. When she spoke, her tone was slow, cutting, unwavering. You don't listen, Stephen. People like you, hosts, interviewers, late-night personalities, you pretend to listen. But you're really waiting for the moment you can twist my words into a punchline. Stephen sat still, very still. That's not what I'm doing, he said. Meghan tilted her head with a tight, disbelieving smile. Isn't it? Because every time someone tries to talk about their lived experience, someone like you interrupts with a joke to make the audience feel comfortable. And you are uncomfortable, he asked. I am correct, she replied. The temperature in the studio dropped 5 degrees. Stephen placed his palms flat on the desk. All right, he said. If you feel that way, then let me ask you something else. Meghan's eyes narrowed. Stephen spoke slowly, carefully, each word deliberate. Do you think you contribute to these conflicts as much as you believe the world conspires against you? It was the question, the one nobody ever dared to ask her openly, the one that sliced straight through the glamour and the talking points. Meghan stiffened. That question, she said, her voice trembling with controlled indignation, is disrespectful. It's honest, Stephen replied. It's accusatory. It's reflective. You're implying I'm the problem. I'm asking if you believe you play a part, a beat, a long, devastating beat. Then, Meghan laughed, a short, humorless, disbelieving laugh that echoed in the silent studio. You know what? She said softly. You don't deserve my answers. Stephen nodded once, slowly, as if a decision had just crystallized. And you don't deserve this platform if you can't speak to people without attacking them. Meghan's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? Stephen straightened in his seat, voice composed but firm. This show is built on conversation, dialogue, respect, even when it's tense, even when we disagree. But what we're not going to do, what I will never allow, is a guest coming on this stage and treating everyone as if they're beneath them. Meghan blinked, stunned for the first time all night. You're twisting everything I've said. Stephen shook his head gently. No. You've been combative since the moment you sat down. And I have really tried, to keep this conversation open. But at some point, Meghan, I have to protect my staff, my audience, and myself. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The studio was so quiet the cameras could have picked up the heartbeat of the boom operator. Stephen leaned forward, hands clasped. I think it's best if we end the interview here. Gasps erupted. The band shifted uncomfortably. A producer behind the curtain whispered, Holy... Meghan's voice finally returned, sharp and brittle. You're ending the interview? Stephen nodded. Yes. You're kicking me off your show? He didn't raise his voice. He didn't smirk. He simply looked at her with tired human honesty. I'm asking you to step out, he said, for the sake of everyone in this room. For a moment, Meghan didn't move. She sat frozen, as if the world had momentarily stopped obeying her expectations. Then she rose, slowly, stiffly, gathering her blazer. You've just shown your true colors, she said. Stephen met her gaze without blinking. And so have you. Meghan turned sharply, walking off stage without looking back, heels tapping like punctuation marks. The audience watched, stunned, murmuring. Stephen inhaled deeply, adjusted his tie, and turned toward the camera with quiet composure. Ladies and gentlemen, he said gently, we'll be right back. Fade out. Silence. The kind of silence that lives on long after the episode ends. If you enjoyed this dramatic late-night showdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next unbelievable interview breakdown. More jaw-dropping moments are coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.